This week, a very speculative bug bounty, even. Facebook's in hot water. Guccifer has been revealed. YouTube is not so kid-friendly. Belkin gets bought, unlocking iPhones, and a vulnerability scanner on the loose. Jason Wood from Paladin Security joins us for expert commentary this week, so stay tuned for this episode of Hack Naked News. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show that brings you the security news each week. And despite popular belief, we do wear pants. It's Hack Naked News.
The breach was huge news at the time.
Linux monitoring tool.
List of affected devices. You can check out the link in the show notes.
Ars Technica is reporting that hackers have cracked the Nintendo Switch this week.
Tracking people's locations and stuff like that.
Figuring out where the military bases are by the United States of America. It's kind of interesting.
And not just the United States of America, as it turns out.
Domain tools help security analysts turn threat data into threat intelligence. They take indicators from your network, including domains and IP addresses, and connect them with nearly every active domain on the internet. Those connections drive risk assessments, help profile attackers, guide online fraud investigations, and map cyber activity to attacker infrastructure. Fortune 1000 companies, global government agencies, and leading security solutions vendors use the Domain Tools platform as a critical ingredient in their threat investigations and proactive defenses. For more information, visit securityweekly.com/domain tools. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these things can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending your assets? Have you penetration tested your public assets? Start 2018 by taking a proactive approach to securing your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting at blackhillsinfosec.com and see how they can help you sleep better at night. Welcome everyone to Hack Naked News, episode 166 this is in fact March something, and I should know this. It is March 27th, believe it or not, on a Tuesday. Hey, it's good to be here. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. Make sure you check out the on-demand material we have available for you at securityweekly.com/on-demand. Also, make sure you visit our fine friends at itpro.tv. I feel like I haven't talked about IT Pro TV in a while. I saw them briefly at InfoSec World in Orlando. Of course, I didn't do any shows last week, so that's probably why I feel that way. But make sure you check them out, itpro.tv/Security Weekly. They've got fantastic training available for you and for your business. So if you work for a company, you want your whole team to have access to a library of over 3,300 hours of awesome content, well, IT Pro TV is your source, so make sure you check them out. Alrighty. Now it's on to the security news for this week. Speculative execution bounty launched by none other than Microsoft, who's taking speculative execution vulnerability seriously with their announcement of a new set of bug bounties covering these types of flaws. The highest payout goes to whoever can discover a new class of speculative execution flaws, coming in at $250,000, all the way down to $25,000 for spotting existing speculative execution flaws in various versions of Windows. Did I say speculative execution enough for you? Okay, there was one more time. Okay, now I'm done saying speculative execution, except for that time. Okay, no, now I'm really done. Facebook woes continue. Facebook was all in the news this week. Most recently, it was reported that the FTC has opened up a data privacy probe, which sounds uncomfortable, as it should be for Facebook, who is in hot water this week on so many different fronts. It's so bad, they took out ads in popular newspapers, such as the New York Times, and pledged to protect users' data. Let's first start with the Cambridge Analytica debacle. The investigation stems around Facebook's acknowledgement earlier this month that since 2015, a third-party application has handed over the data of up to 50 million platform users to Cambridge Analytica, a consulting group that has worked on several high-profile political campaigns, including that of President Donald Trump. If that's not enough for you, it's been reported that Facebook is responsible for collecting call history and SMS data via the Facebook Messenger app, The company had been logging Android users' call and text history without permission. Facebook did respond to reports on Sunday saying that some users' information has been logged, but stressing the function is always been opt-in only. That the information collected doesn't include the contents of calls or text, and that the data isn't sold to third parties. And to top things off in the news for Facebook and round things out about a rumor we reported on last week, if that's still not enough, Alex Stamos, Facebook's now former chief information security officer, will be leaving the company in August of this year, reportedly staying on from now until August for the transition. And that's kind of sad because Alex was a champion for security in Facebook, and it's very clear that now multiple sources have reported that Alex is in fact leaving. So there's more articles that I reference in the show notes, wiki.securityweekly.com. Guccifer 2.0's schoolboy error, as it was reported, revealed he's hacking from Moscow. Guccifer 2.0, who is, for those that don't know, the malicious or notorious malicious hacker who is alleged to have compromised the computer systems of the Democratic National Committee, DNC, and stolen opposition research on Donald Trump, has accidentally tipped his hand, that he was working for the Russian intelligence. The so-called lone hacker, air quotes, apparently forgot to enable his VPN on certain connections, which in turn left some logs at a social media company, which in turn revealed his IP address, which in turn was then traced back to Russia's GRU, or Russia's Military Intelligence Division. Big oops. YouTube isn't for kids. Graham Cluley has reported on a Wired story that ran that YouTube continues to recommend young kids watch some deeply weird and sometimes downright disturbing videos. I have experienced this as well with my own children, and at the technical level, I struggle to understand how you classify videos within the YouTube platform as safe for kids. Certainly, we can't trust YouTube's own algorithms, which they do have some checkboxes in there for safe viewing. Obviously, those don't work very well. I did recently, and we'll report on this maybe on other shows, pick up a Circle by Disney device, which does contain the ability to restrict content on YouTube. Exactly how it does that, I'm still unclear and investigating, so we'll see how that goes, and I'll report back. iPhone manufacturer Foxconn acquires Belkin, Linksys, and Wemo, which are, of course, all owned by Belkin. The Taiwanese hardware manufacturer, Foxconn, which is contracted by Apple to make its iPhones, has agreed to acquire accessory firm Belkin and its associated brands, Linksys and Wemo, for $866 million in cash by way of a merger. They have some serious competition in this market of Wi-Fi devices and home automation with the likes of Amazon and many others. It'll be interesting to see how or if security is handled with this recent merger. Linksys in particular, of course, seems to be thrown around like a hot potato in the market after being sold to Cisco, then to Belkin, and now part of Foxconn. GrayKey iPhone Unlocker has apparently hit the market. GrayKey has come to market with this device that can unlock iPhones. One is somewhat limited and must be internet connected at $15,000. However, there's a $30,000 option, which, at this price, the device requires no internet connection whatsoever and has no limit to the number of unlocks. It will work for as long as it works, presumably. Well, it'll work for as long as it works. Well, no kidding. But presumably until Apple fixes whatever vulnerability the device relies on, at which time updated phones would no longer be unlockable unless they're ahead of the game and developing and or buying exploits to that Apple doesn't know about yet, which if I own the company, that's what I would be doing. Although somewhat shady, I don't know if I'd be in that business. GitHub has, we reported on, turned up a vulnerability scanner. It looks like it found about 4 million flaws, and it looks like some people at least are actually fixing the vulnerabilities discovered by GitHub's own vulnerability scanning tool. GitHub announced the first run of the security checker turned up 4 million vulnerabilities in over 500,000 repositories. On that first pass, GitHub's posted 450,000 of the vulnerabilities were resolved by December 1st, 2017. Now, that's 500,000 repositories, but 5 million vulnerabilities, and 450,000 of those vulnerabilities of the 4 million, that's a pretty not a very impressive percentage. In the months since then, they say their rate of vulnerability resolved in the first 7 days of detection has been about 30%. Additionally, 15% of the alerts were dismissed within 7 days. So kind of some interesting numbers from GitHub's own scanning. With that, we're going to take a very short break. Come back with Jason Wood from Paladin Security. Stay tuned. IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. Watch over 3,300 hours of content in their on-demand library on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for Teams by visiting itpro.tv/Security Weekly and start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off standard or premium IT Pro TV memberships using the code SECWeekly30. Today's determined attackers easily bypass even the most advanced network defenses. Trying to ramp up staff to detect their backdoors can cost thousands of dollars and take months, even years. With Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, we enable junior analysts to detect even the most advanced backdoors in a matter of hours. Sign up for a demo and purchase our product today by visiting activecountermeasures.com/HNN. Active Countermeasures. Make every analyst a hunter. Welcome back, everyone, to Hack Naked News. We're going to talk about DNS over HTTPS. If you don't know what those two things mean or how they could potentially interact, I highly recommend, again, itpro.tv/Security Weekly. Go check them out, get learned up, and then come back to our network and enjoy a deeper understanding of some of the topics that we talk about, although sometimes I'm really not good about talking about DNS and HTTPS, and maybe I need to go to itpro.tv/Security Weekly to train myself. Fortunately for me, I've got experts like Jason Wood who are here with us today to talk about this topic that sounds very interesting. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Paul.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just teeing you up, dude. That's all. I'm just going to sit back and have my cigar and my coffee and listen to you drop some knowledge.
Right on.
All right.
Well, we'll go ahead and get learned up a little bit here on DNS over HTTPS. And the idea, this is something that could be coming to a browser that you're running. Essentially, what's going on here is Mozilla and Cloudflare. Looks like they're going to be testing a new method for resolving domain names down to IP addresses in the development version of Firefox. And this test should be occurring in the next few weeks. No exact date on that yet. But essentially what's going on, instead of your browser making a request to a DNS server, it makes an HTTPS request to some service that has been configured in the browser, in this case Cloudflare, to resolve that name to an IP address. Now, a draft has been written up for an RFC, what will become, I guess, an RFC on the Internet Engineering Task Force website. The title of the draft is called DNS Queries over HTTPS. Now, another name I heard bandied about was Trusted Recursive Resolver via DNS over HTTPS, which is a little bit of a mouthful. Both of these just been shortened down to DOH. So it's kind of how I'm going to refer to it here. But the idea behind this is that the proposed idea behind this is that DNS has got some problems. One, it's over 40 years old. It's clear text.
Hey, now, there's nothing wrong with things over 40 years old. I'm just saying.
I am not disagreeing with you there at all. But yeah, so they're saying it's getting a little rickety, which maybe I can sympathize with on a personal level.
Right. That doesn't mean we need to take it out to the back of the barn and shoot it. So just saying.
Exactly. But some of the stuff they're saying is, hey, DNS is vulnerable to things like spoofing. It's clear text, so it's easy to be sniffed up by internet service providers and anybody that's maybe on a wireless network with you or things like that. At some point where they have a view into traffic, and so there's potentially some privacy concerns there. So instead of querying the DNS server directly, your browser makes a DNS API request over HTTPS to some service, which can be set up and hosted at various parties and configured in your browser. and the DNS essentially gets offloaded to, let's say, Cloudflare. Cloudflare in this case, they do the DNS request and then ship it back to you over HTTPS. This eliminates the ability of your ISP, for example, to collect your the domain name, easily collect the domain names that you're visiting by simply grabbing things via DNS and DNS server logs and things like that. You're still essentially, though, getting a DNS query being performed, right? It's just happening with somebody else out there. If they'll make that DNS request for you, unless they already had it cached on their side. So we're essentially, DNS isn't going away. It's just being offloaded to somebody else. Some things that I read about this were kind of interesting. One, for DOH or DNS over HTTPS, the requests need to be done over an HTTP 2 version 2 session. So there's some requirements here as far as technology upgrades. It has apparently the ability to do some server pushes of information down to the browser, which I thought was kind of interesting as I was reading through the draft RFC. Now, those who are concerned about privacy, folks, particularly as legislation has changed to allow ISPs to have more leeway in the information they collect and release to others, some of the same issues are going to be present with DNS over HTTPS. Obviously, you can, the provider of DOH can still collect this information and record it on their side and do whatever it is that they would want. It just isn't going to be available to your ISP. Now, Cloudflare has said that they're not going to keep any logs for more than 24 hours. They're not going to ever store source IP addresses. But that's their implementation of it. They're not the only ones working on this. Actually, as I was doing some reading, Google has already performed this, a little bit of a test on this with their own, what they called Google Public DNS. They did that back in November of 2017. One of the key differences, though, and this has caused a little bit of a kerfluffle with some of the Mozilla developers, is that Google's implementation was opt-in. You had to go in and configure Chrome to use this service. In the case of the Mozilla test, as it's being planned right now at least, if you're using the development version of Firefox, you will have to opt out to avoid this. So as soon as you start using the application, by default, it will use this new mechanism for resolving names to IPs. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I mean, there are going to be obviously some changes here on the HTTP version that we're going to be using. For me doing penetration testing, this was kind of interesting because this is going to change how how the traffic is going to flow and what's occurring there. So that's something for me to keep in mind. One of the things that came to mind right away is we're taking a system that everybody knows and understands pretty dang well. DNS is very well understood, and now we're going to change that. And it's we're going to have a mixed way on each system of resolving names to IP addresses, depending on your browser version, how it's set up, and stuff like that. And enterprises are going to need to be ready to support their users when and if this rolls out on a large scale. Essentially, though, the help desk staff or whoever's troubleshooting is going to have to adjust their point of view from a well-understood protocol and be ready for a whole new mechanism of name resolution. Privacy concerns around this for organizations. Maybe right now they host their own DNS servers, forward it on to somebody that they trust for a forwarder or something like that. But this could potentially offload whatever information to Cloudflare. So let's say you have an internal application, and all of a sudden their browser is making a request out to Cloudflare or Google or somebody else for an internal resource over DOH instead of DNS, and hitting the internal DNS server. So that's going to be kind of interesting. How are they going to react to that, and how do they feel about that? Some preparation is going to be needed for that. So yeah, a lot of interesting ramifications here to this idea of how to change things.
I think that there are some security benefits to it. Certainly, if you're on an open Wi-Fi network, and there's some DNS attacks that are happening, someone's ARP cache poisoning or trying to get in the middle of your DNS traffic, funneling this over HTTPS can help. I think the rest of it's kind of a train wreck for most of us in technology. I think for your average user that hasn't configured a special DNS server, although some might, at home you might be using Cisco Umbrella or other DNS providers that are limiting your internet access. Maybe they're taking away ads, maybe they're taking away adult websites for your children. You can certainly have a DNS service do that. Then you put Firefox on there, and now you're bypassing all of the controls that you've put in place. So I think for users that don't have that in place, it can add a layer of security for a lot of other people. And then you get into corporations or businesses where internal applications and even external applications rely on your DNS traffic going to the specified DNS server. All of a sudden, users start popping Firefox on it, and they're like calling the help desk going, I can't get to my websites. That's a nightmare. That is disaster waiting to happen, which is why I truly believe that Mozilla is not going to roll this out turned on by default, that it's going to be like the Google model where you have to turn it on, which is probably why Google did that. I know even here in the office, we have DNS servers set up that automatically do ad blocking for us. And so if you were to use Firefox, all of a sudden all your ads are going to start to load, and a lot of those ad sites contain malware, and that could be bad times for all. Unless you're able to hook this up to other services that can provide those services, I think it's a great benefit. If you kind of just get whatever you get out of the box and it's on by default, complete disaster.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, I mean, you're talking about, because you can, there are service providers that can set this up. Obviously, it sounds to me like an enterprise would be able to stand up their own DOH system, right? But it's yet another system to set up and maintain and troubleshoot and all this stuff and configure with the resources and pain in the butt all over the place. So I
also think from a privacy perspective that the ISPs don't need DNS to figure out where you're going on the internet. Certainly if it's HTTP, it's in the clear. They can see where you're going. Certificates contain a lot of information that everyone can see, which could also be indicative of the types of sites you're going to, as well as just all the other IP level traffic in the 7 layers. The IP layer is going to tell you where they're going, at least by IP address, and the domain name can sometimes also leak depending on the situation as well. So I don't see this providing much in the way of privacy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and it's certainly, the information is still available somewhere. So, you're essentially just taking it, moving it to somebody else and deciding, I don't trust Xmission, who is my ISP. Right. And instead, I trust Cloudflare. Yeah. Right. And do I really? Well, I don't know. I don't,
Right. And I mean, the way to get around this is with a full VPN, but reports I've been reading lately, and I always see these reports that, 13 or 15 out of the 30 or whatever aren't really protecting your data in some way. And we've certainly seen very leaky VPN services that will kind of do the opposite of what Mozilla's put in. They'll make all of your connections go over to the VPN, but then they'll forget about DNS in certain configurations, and your DNS traffic is going over in the clear so everyone can see where you're going anyway. Happening. So,
yeah. So anyhow, if y'all are using the development version of Firefox, be aware. Sounds like it's coming your way, at least for a test. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out on a wider scale. I agree with you. I suspect by the time they go prime time, this is going to become an opt-in scenario. So something to watch, something definitely go check out, because if this starts rolling out, this is something fundamental we need to understand how it's changing traffic in our networks and what's occurring. So go check it out in the show notes. Got the link to the article about this, as well as the proposed RFC.
Jason Wood from Paladin Security, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We'll see you next time.